Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Journal Jabber, the show that's dedicated to authors and readers of all levels and genre. Whether you are a cuddler of words or a purchaser of words, this show is for you. I'm Angela Eureka Smith, your hostess, and this afternoon we have a super special show as we celebrate the art of microfiction. And we've got an amazing group of dedicated scribblers who call themselves the Iron Writers. I love that name. They are actually a competitive writing group, and they're now gearing up to decide who will be the Iron Writer of 2014. 4 writers are going pen to pen, and we will be hearing samples of their work today. Joining me, I have Amanda Huntley, who is an Iron Writer participant and an enthusiast, and she's the owner of 3 Faith and Line by Lion imprint. I do want to make an announcement, though, before we start the show. Last week, Amy I was on, and she let everyone know that we will be moving the show to YouTube completely in a month. This show that we're doing right now will be the first show to go up on the new YouTube channel. So for a while, we're going to have 2 shows a week, but it's basically the same show. One here on our regular format and one on YouTube. And this show will be the first one to go on the new channel. So I'm so excited. It's going to be an awesome show. And I'd also like to thank our sponsor, the Eyes for Editing at theeyesforediting.com. Journal Jabber would not be possible without generous support from sponsors like that. You can find Eyes for Editing in a link in the show description. But now that we've got all that done, all the business end of things is over, let's get on with the show. I'm super excited to hear all about microfiction and Iron Writers and the competitive art of this. We're going to get our blood pumping and we're going to kill somebody. No, not really. But now, without any more delay,
it feels like it
let's hear about
sometimes,
this.
though.
Yeah, we're going to get really, really, really vicious now. Well, thank you, Amanda, for joining us on the show to talk to us about microfiction.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah. Well, and when I first heard about Iron Writers, I had no idea what microfiction even was. I mean, I kind of thought of it as microfiche, that little stuff in the old libraries that you look through a big screen. So can you tell us what
When I
microfiction
first heard
is?
Sure. Microfiction is tiny little bite-sized bits of fiction. It's generally referred to often as flash fiction as well, and it can take anywhere from about 100 words to 2,000 words, although there have been microfiction as short as 6 words. Ernest Hemingway actually popularized 6-word stories, and there's a big movement in that. Yeah, his was For Sale, Baby Shoes Never Worn.
Oh, wow.
Which just, I know, it's the epitome of efficiency. It's 6 words, and yet you know everything that has happened. And it's amazing. But in the Iron Writer, we have 2 different kinds of microfiction. One is 500 words, and that's for the weekly challenge in which you have to sign up to participate. And the other is 200 words, which is our weekend quickie, and that takes place on Saturdays, and anybody can participate in those.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I actually didn't realize the weekend quickie was open to all.
It is. If you just go to theironwriter.com on Saturdays, the weekend quickie will actually be there on the home page. And you just hit a reply to comment back, and you can go ahead and post your own 200-word bit there. But there's been, we debate a lot on the Iron Writer, pretty much about anything. But we've been debating a lot lately about what makes a quality piece of microfiction. And I think what it has come down to is that it is compelling, that there are strategic and well-thought-out word choices, and that it has a satisfying ending. Even though it is a short piece of fiction, that piece of fiction needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. We can't just have an excerpt from a larger story and call it microfiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just have it end. And there's one of the things about it, and I don't know if this is all microfiction or just Iron Writers, but one of the interesting things is the elements. There's like a parameter that you have to publish in.
That's what drew me into the Iron Writer initially, is I really liked the idea, 1, of the deadline, and 2, of the elements. You're given 4 elements when you're challenged. There's 3 elements on the weekend quickies. And they are as random as the founder of the Iron Writer is himself, and that's saying quite a bit. They've ranged from everything from a nighttime fire breather, which is one of the elements in the challenge that I just completed, to a toilet paper hat, to certain breeds of octopi, But you have to take those 4 elements and you have to actually weave them into a cohesive story. And points are taken off by the judges, and style points, which really don't count for anything but are just kind of discussed among the group, if you just throw the elements in. The point is to actually weave them in a cohesive manner, and it's so much fun. It's so much fun, and it really hones your skills as a writer.
Mhm. Yeah, and then, I mean, I've done a couple of them just on the side to try them, and one thing that I really notice is it breaks you out of your genre, because you have such tight requirements. You have to break out of your usual rut. Do you find that's true for you?
Absolutely. Generally, I write children's fiction. I do delve into the world of speculative fiction as a whole, but generally I write children's fiction. And I have found that a lot of times the elements are just not conducive to that. And so it really has forced me to break out. A couple of challenges ago, I ended up writing a piece of fiction that was a religion and philosophy piece from the point of a whack-a-mole, just due to the elements. But what made it challenging for me is I actually wrote it in the shape of a whack-a-mole mallet.
Oh,
so
wow.
Not only are we talking about elements and word count and moving outside your genre, but you start to challenge yourself to reach further and further, because that for me was now word length. Not just word count, but the length of the words itself and how to manipulate that. And, in the last challenge that I participated in, the elements were a nighttime fire breather, a lace shawl. And to be honest, right this second, I don't remember the other 2. But I ended up doing it in the style of an Inuit folktale. About a shaman doing a cleansing, and so which is completely different from anything I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, that is awesome. I love that. How did you even become involved with Iron Writers? How did you find out about it?
There is an author whose name is Eric Garrison, who has become a friend of mine, and he was participating in the first Open. For those not familiar with the Iron Writer Open system, there are 4 Opens, 1 for each season. And it is a bracket-style tournament challenge that starts with the 16 people who have won a challenge already in that season, and then it breaks down. You have 1 challenge with 16 if you win your bracket. There's 1 challenge with 4, and then the winner of that goes on to be part of the yearly competition to find out who's going to be the Iron Writer for the year. And Eric Garrison was participating in the first Open. And so he was asking people to come and vote for him. Iron Writer is a combination of both popular vote and judges' votes. And he was asking people to come and vote for him. And so I went over there and, I saw what they were doing, and I voted for my favorite story, and then it said you could sign up. And so I started to. I went ahead and decided to try it. But what really got me hooked on the group was the dynamics of the group itself. Not only is it an amazing writing challenge that really hones your skills, but it's also a really great community of writers. And there's people of all levels, from professional, down to novice, to people who are just getting started. And there's a lot of camaraderie, a lot of trash talking, a lot of joking around, but also a lot of support.
Mm-hmm.
So I came to write a short story, and I stayed for the group.
Yeah. That's awesome. And it's probably, when you say support, it's probably a lot of just tips. Like, I'm thinking about doing this. We all have so many questions. Like, should we get an agent? Should we not? Should we go with the publishing house? Should we not? Should we write flash fiction? Should we not? And so I imagine a group like that would be just priceless for just being able to share information.
Absolutely. It's amazing for that. There are actually publishers that are part of the group. I'm one, like you mentioned at the beginning of the show. I own a publishing house. And there are some others that own small press publishing houses as well. And additionally, there are a lot of people who have chosen to go the self-publication route. And so it's nice to have people banter back and forth on the pros and cons of each, and the tips, and what you can try, and how to market your work. And additionally, there's actually a series on the website of writing tips. One is how to eliminate the word very from your writing. Another one was actually done after a grudge match that was talking about trying to eliminate or reduce the use of to be verbs. One that I wrote that's on there is kind of one of my personal soapboxes, if you will, which is, how to write a novel. And basically what it comes down to is you just sit down and write. Understand that nothing but writing is writing. And so it's, you can go on there and you can post a question to the group. If you need people to beta read or if you want to know what different terms mean, but you can also look on the website for the different articles that Iron Writers have written about this.
Awesome. Well, I've got some clips of some of the open winners over the last year, and these guys are all competing right now, is my understanding, to see who becomes the Iron Writer of the Year for 2014. So I'd like to listen to one with you, and then we can talk about it afterwards. All right, here we go. And I don't know if this is spring, summer, winter, or fall, but it's a good one. I love this.
Marital Strife by Dani J. Caile. Right, that's it. I've had enough. She popped the sucker dart from her forehead without tripping over the scene-better day's goat puppet from The Sound of Music, grabbed the toy Colt 45 that little Timmy was playing with only a moment ago, and put it in the attaché case of her husband's James Bond mini spy target game, apparently used by Sean Connery himself when promoting the toy way back in 1965. Hey, be careful. That's a collector's piece. Then why is he playing with it? Because he knows how to be careful, not like you and your elephant feet. You bust Audrey Hepburn's rhinestone tiara from My Fair Lady the other day. She stood there fuming. I tell you why he's playing with it, because we don't have money to buy him any real toys. You keep buying all this 60s movie memorabilia crap. It was his turn to get upset. Crap? They are pieces of classic movie history. How dare you, you troglodyte? She moved over to the table and picked up a blue toy. What about this, then? A muddy mudskipper cereal bowl caddy? This isn't classic movie history. Come on, woman. The Woolly Woodpecker Show, duh, not to mention Harris Pete. How could she argue with such nonsense? And this? She pointed to a plastic figure. That's a sword-fighting skeleton prop from Jason and the Argonauts, 1963, created by the late but great Ray Harryhausen. Jason and the Argonauts? The Golden Fleet? But that movie's not even a classic. Dynamation before all this terrible CGI. You've really gone too far. You spend all our money on these. Even little Timmy had to spend his first few months sleeping in the original black cot from Rosemary's Baby because we had no money to get another. You're crazy, absolutely crazy. Oh, don't talk rot. She picked up an old chewed end of a cigar. You almost ripped my mother's head off when she tried to throw this away. That's a stubbed-out cigar from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. This house is full of your shit. Shit? You can't move without tripping over something. She threw a pair of flippers at him, which was sitting on the sideboard. Hey, they're from The Graduate. Priceless. And these? A worn-out, disgusting-looking pair of dirty white undies. They stink. I'm going to wash them. You can't do that. They're Tom Courtenay's shorts from The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Runner. Next was a piece of wood. And what the hell is this? A broken cue from The Hustler, 1961. I just can't believe you. I really can't. Red-faced, she dragged little Timmy out of the room to help him put on his pajamas and clean his teeth before bedtime. I guess that means no chains and restraints as worn by Charlton Heston in the 1968 version of Planet of the Apes tonight, then. She shouted back from the hall. Only if you do the washing up.
Awesome.
Yeah, that is and that's kind of classic Dani J there. Dani J. Caile does a lot of really quirky humor like that. He's one of the Iron Writer old-timers. And what I love about it is how, there's so much. I mean, when you think that you have 500 words, and he managed to use a lot of them on describing the memorabilia, and yet was still able to use that which was left over to where you understand the dynamics of this relationship so well and the personalities of people so well.
Yeah, that was great. Do you remember that one? Do you remember, can you pick out the elements there? Do you remember what they were?
I know that the stubbed-out cigar was one of the elements, and I believe that a pair of pajamas was one of the elements. To be honest, I'm having a hard time remembering the other two.
Right.
Dani actually beat me. He and I were in a bracket together and actually beat me in that bracket to go on to end up winning the Open in its entirety for that season.
Oh, wow. Well, that's good, too, if you can't remember the elements, because it kind of means they're so blended in there. As I was listening, I was trying to pick out what didn't fit or what, had to be there. And I couldn't tell. I mean, everything just blended right in there.
And I think that's kind of the sign of someone who's truly grasped the Iron Rider and has learned to do it, usually through trial and error. I think everybody, when they start, their elements kind of stick out a bit. But as you do it more and more and become more seasoned of a veteran, I think definitely a sign. And one of the things that I try to do is to not read the elements ahead of time. And then to go through and to read the stories and see if I can pick them out that way.
Ah, that's a good idea.
It takes some really rapid scrolling, but it can be done.
Well, how do you because this is obviously an exercise. It's just as good an exercise for writing as I've ever seen. How do you, because you've got the publishing end of it and you're a writer, how do you think this has affected you in both? I mean, do you look at other people's work differently when it comes to you as a submission? Or, in your own writing, how does it affect you?
In my own writing, it's affected me, one, in my ability to hit a deadline. I think that a trap that often writers get into is that, we can only write when we're inspired. We have to be inspired. Well, with the Iron Rider, you have 4 days. And if inspiration doesn't come in those 4 days, if that's what you're depending on, then you're kind of in a bad spot. But if you learn, if you learn to reach down inside and to pull the inspiration from within yourself, then you can produce a really high quality piece. I think that the necessity of editing too is something that's become huge for me since I've started doing this, because you have 500 words to pack as big of a punch as you can. And so you learn to, without doing it sloppily, a lot of times when people first get started, they use a lot of half sentences and they drop pronouns. And yes, that's a way to get below 500 words, but as you practice, as you engage in this exercise more, you learn to just pick meatier words. And that's something that's absolutely translated over to me as a publisher, because I noticed that books that have a lot of extraneous words don't necessarily appeal to me as much anymore, especially because, those words literally as a publisher are going to cost me money. I don't necessarily, and if they don't help the story, I don't want them there. Yeah. And that's something that's really become enhanced by the Iron Rider. Another thing that I've noticed is keeping an eye on the market that's out there. A couple of us in the Iron Rider, myself included, have become infatuated with steampunk and cyberpunk. And I've kind of watched as that has caught on globally, but also has caught on within the Iron Rider, and I'm watching people start to pick that up and run with it. Satire is something that I'm seeing a huge movement in within the Iron Rider. There are a lot of people who are writing satire, and those pieces, no matter who they're from, tend to get very, very high amounts of votes and very high amounts of accolades from people. So as a publisher, now I'm starting to say, okay, if there's a rise in the market for that, maybe I ought to be looking for some satire.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. And as a group that works together constantly, I think that probably as writers, people feel more comfortable in exploring and playing more, which is kind of what we're supposed to be doing. That is what creativity is playing. But you really also need to have a supportive group. It's hard to just jump right out there and here's my funny piece.
Right. And what I like about the Iron Rider is it really is the perfect combination of, it is supportive. We're there for each other. We buy each other's books. We help each other out as much as we're able. We beta read for each other on our larger projects all of the time. But at the same time, if you put out something that is to quote Dani himself, crap, utter crap, there are people that are going to gently let you know this, but never unsolicited. But I personally have put out there that, hit me. If there's something you like or you don't like, I can take it. And so it's not uncommon for me to get messages from people that say, listen, this didn't work. Or you could have done this and it would have been better. Or I really liked this. But at the same time, if you put something out there, there's not going to be anybody there waiting to beat you up.
Right.
People, it really is a very supportive environment, and that's one thing that I like about it.
Yeah, and I think I'd rather have my friends tell me that something I wrote was complete crap than publish it and start getting the reviews in, because you really can't take those away.
Right. Once they're out there, they're out there. The internet never dies, and so it's nice to have that group of honest yet kind-hearted support.
Awesome. Well, I want to listen to another one. We've got another one of the winners of the Open has their clip on our site. We're going to listen to that one, and then I'd like to talk a little bit more about publishing before we move back to Iron Writers.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, this is called Oh, the Tangled Web She Weaves.
Oh, the Tangled Web She Weaves by Don Corcoran. Scotland the Brave drifted through the halls. Inmates echoed the bagpipes' gentle rolls with their own dissonant caterwauling, while others shouted, "And that infernal jig!" Miguel just smiled. This was a big day. His girl was going home. He knocked. "Good morning, Miss Cross," he said, turning the glass doorknob. Intricate doilies draped over every antique sideboard and bureau. A silver-haired woman sat, focused on a nest of thread. "What did you have Conrad play?" "Oh, Farewell to Arms," sang Rosa. Miguel was hypnotized by the way she handled her lacecraft, her aged fingers and the bejeweled shuttle dancing a delicate pas de deux. She shrugged. "Conrad's limited repertoire will suffice." "Oh!" Wincing, Rosa bled on the loops and whirls. Miguel was beside her in a moment. She rebuffed him. "Oh, don't be foolish. I'm fine." "You must shed pints using these contraptions." He scowled at the wicked barbs that tipped the golden shuttles. Her only response was a wry grin and a glance over her bifocals. "So, what are you doing?" he asked. "I figured you'd be packed, ready to be received by family and friends." "Oh, everything is in order, Miguel. The next step of my plan must be attended to." "Yes, Rosa." His eye rolling was evident in his voice. "You were here when the Sanatorium de Saint-Germanois opened and will leave when its doors close." Miguel's voice lowered. "Didn't we agree not to speak of your fantasies?" Rosa waved a dismissive hand. "I don't want anything to jeopardize our hard work. You're going home, Rosa." "Yes, dear." She tucked a final thread behind other rows and declared her work finished. Donning a coat and gloves, she gestured for Miguel to carry her bags. Patients, doctors, and orderlies stopped to watch as she sauntered towards the hospital exit. At her passing, haggard expressions relaxed and forced grins turned to elated relief. She led Miguel down the opulent halls and through iron-bound gates. The pair marched across the verdant lawn to a cul-de-sac, empty save for an elegant rickshaw. "Where's your son? Your family?" Miguel lifted the arm of the rickshaw, testing it. With a smile, Rosa unfolded the new lacework and draped it over Miguel's arm. "You're going to take me home." She closed her eyes and muttered thrice in Latin, "Ianitori opus ad transfiguramento iamento." The orderly watched as wicker tendrils unraveled from the taxi's handles and wrapped around his arm, slicing through flesh. He screamed. Rosa put a gloved finger to her lips. "The unpleasantness will only last for a moment, my young friend," and she glanced back, finding solace in the peaceful visage of the sanitarium. Miguel's eyes shrank to brown points in a sea of white. He tried to pull away as more of the rickshaw grappled with muscle and tendons, tethering his other arm. His legs buckled under him, his body twisted and bubbled beneath his clothing. In a few moments, a web of rattan and sinew bound a small horse to her carriage. Rosa pulled a riding crop from the vehicle floor. "Good boy," and she rode toward the afternoon sun.
Yeah, that one just gives you chills, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And that was Corcoran's reading, by the way.
It
That
was, and I
very
remember there was an added element of pressure to that one because the tatting needles that they reference in there, tatting is a hobby of the wife of Brian Y. Rogers, who is the founder of the Iron Rider. And so he made some fairly colorful threats as to anyone who did not describe their use properly.
That's funny. Yeah, and we have a clip of Brian Rogers, who founded this, but we're not going to be able to play it on this show. It will be available when we're moving this to YouTube. On that show, that clip will be available. But he has a wonderful little discourse where he talks about how he started it, and it's a really good little piece. We'll have that prepared for the main show that's coming out on YouTube. But going back to this, we said we were going to go back to publishing a little bit, and I do find it interesting what you said about, this is an economy of words, and as a publisher, words cost you money. So do you foresee yourself publishing any kind of microfiction pieces, or do you think that this could be a trend that hits the publishing world?
Could be. I myself would be willing to, and I'm actually looking to publish anthologies of microfiction. It's something that you have to approach cautiously due to royalty requirements and the amount of time and energy that would be involved in making sure that every author participating in an anthology of microfiction still gets a substantial return on their work. That would be a difficult dance to achieve. But I do see the potential for a shift from the internet to actual bound and published copies and anthologies as such. Mm-hmm. I'm actually just getting ready to release on the 16th of May. I will be going to the Steampunk World Fair in New Jersey, where we're going to be releasing an anthology of certainly not microfiction, but definitely short stories in the steampunk and cyberpunk genres. And I think that today, with people being so busy, I think there's a return of interest to shorter pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, and I think that is a big thing with we are so busy. When I was younger, I used to read huge novels. I mean, the Harry Potter set was God knows how many words, but, and that was nothing. But now in between work and this and, my own writing career and everything else, I can barely crack a book. And then we're supposed to edit them. I mean, we're supposed to review them and everything else. I find myself very attracted to microfiction.
Right, because it's nice. It's a short bite that you can fit easily into your day. So it's a nice, pleasant diversion, but we don't have time to dedicate necessarily, especially if I have time to read right now. It's going to be reading submissions. It's going to be working my way through the slush pile and figuring out that which I want to keep and that which I don't. And so I don't have time necessarily to sit and read novels anymore. I want to. I have a stack of them that I hope to read someday. And so I really enjoy the microfiction because reading is so good for the soul. It's so good for the spirit. It's good for everything. And so it's nice to have that bit of refreshment that I can actually fit into my day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when it does have, like you had said, focusing on having an actual beginning, a middle, and an end, even though it is a shorter piece, I feel like I got the same satisfaction out of listening to these two pieces that we just listened to as I have reading, The Hunger Games. I mean, there is a whole story there.
And you can sit and you can think about the characters because there are subtleties in character that you can contemplate, and there are entire stories there. And so it's nice. I find myself thinking about the stories long after I've read them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they kind of kickstart the imagination because with this last one, I'm thinking, how did she get there? Was she a witch before? Is that why she was in the sanitarium?
Right, it does. It leaves you wanting to know so much more about it, which is another reason that I think there might be a call for, anthologies, collections of these microfiction, because we do want more. And part of the fun of them is that you only get a snapshot. But how fun could it be if you could get 4 or 5 snapshots from the same world?
Right. Right. That's fantastic. I just think Iron Writers, I cannot say enough good things about it as a discipline for writers. I mean, for getting your name out there, for honing your craft, for learning discipline, that this is it. This is the way to go. And
it has been absolutely indispensable for me. And I can read. I'm taking my first venture into adult fiction. And I can tell the difference in my writing from what I've written before to what I've written now. And to be honest, because children's fiction is such a different creature from adult fiction, I don't know if I'd ever had the courage to jump genres like I am if I'd not been doing the Iron Writer.
Yeah. Yeah, and do you think that affects you as a publisher? I know I keep going back to that, but we've never gotten to have a publisher on the show before, as far as I know, as far as I've been here. And we do plan on having you back on the show for just a whole show about you and your imprint. But I just want to know, because you are seeing so many genres through Iron Writers, do you think you're more accepting of different genres coming into your publishing house?
I absolutely am. I started out a publishing house when my former publisher had closed down. He was no longer available for us, and he was primarily speculative fiction. So when I started my publishing house, what I had was speculative fiction. And because I write fantasy children's stories, that was where I was more familiar. And that's kind of, given my opportunity, that tends to be what I read. Is the fantasy and the science fiction and the horrors and the thrillers and anything along that vein. But in reading this, I'm seeing so much more, and I'm open to so much more, because I feel like after having done this for a while, between judging myself and just reading them and voting and seeing what the judges' response is, I feel like I'm better able to calculate what makes quality in various genres, whereas before I might not have been able to do so. We have romance writers in there, and we have speculative fiction, and we have, forgive me, but chick lit or just general female-oriented fiction. We have horror writers. We have everything in there. Michael Pittman writes mystery, but it's very emotional mystery. It's a really intriguing combination. And so I feel like because I've been doing this and because I've been seeing this, I feel more confident in my ability to say, yes, this is a good, well-done, marketable piece, even though it's not something that I personally write, and even though it's not something that I've necessarily published before now, I can feel confident moving forward in that.
Right, right. And that's a good point that you bring up, too, with the different genres available, because I think, well, I hope we all do this, otherwise I'm making a confession here, but I have my prejudices, which, like romance. If you tell me this is a romance book, I probably won't crack it, even slightly, to look inside. Because I just think I don't like that. I don't like chick lit, but 500 words of it, and you're reading it for this challenge, I can handle it. And, probably I wouldn't mind some of it at all. I would probably actually enjoy some of it. I've just got that prejudice in my mind that I don't read this.
Right, and that's, one of our authors on there is Danielle Zwissler. And I might have just massacred her last name, but we'll be hearing from her throughout the course of this show. And she writes romance novels. She writes Western romance novels. And I'm not going to lie, when she first showed that, I kind of raised the eyebrow. It was one of those, oh, really? Do you now? And then she proceeded to come in and thoroughly trout everybody every time she came to bat. And rightfully so. Her works are really well done. And so, it had gotten to the point where finally I went, okay, what? I will buy one of these. I want to see what she has to offer because she writes incredibly well.
Yeah, that is. Well, that's funny that you bring her up because that is the next clip that I have lined up to play. So, let's just listen to it now, and we will hear this for ourselves.
Fantastic.
Okay, this is, and how do you say her name again?
Danielle Zwissler, I believe. It's Zwissler.
Okay.
Because we live in a virtual world, I don't know that I've ever heard her say it.
Right. Well, I'm going, as the professional publisher, I'm going with your pronunciation. So if we mispronounced it, Danielle, it's Amanda's fault.
Right, right.
Yay. All right, let's hear this clip. This is Danielle, and it's one of the opens that she won this last year.
In music education, and decided that it wasn't quite what I thought it would be, and began my writing career just after that. Currently, I have 26 books out on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, and other retailers, as well as almost every single one of those books are also on paperback. I'm published with 2 different publishing companies right now, Firefly and Wisp Books, and also with Books to Go Now. I joined the Iron Writer Challenge for challenge number 46. I lost by 1 vote with my story, Hang Your Head Low. And I really like the challenge because it helps you become a better writer. The stories are very, very hard. It's very interesting coming up with different plot ideas from 4 totally different elements. It's definitely interesting, and it sometimes is pretty difficult. So far, I've won Challenge 55, 57, and the Spring Equinox, Mark Twain Division. I'm now in the finals and up against 3 men. After reading several of the other Iron stories, I'm a bit nervous, but totally ready to unleash the girl power. So good luck, guys, because you're going to need it. This story that I got into the finals with is called Guns N' Roses, and I'm very happy to share it with you. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Guns N' Roses by Danielle Lee Zwissler. I met him at the airport. He had the most beautiful blue eyes that I had ever seen. It took me a few moments to catch my breath once our eyes met over the conveyor belt where we had just picked up our luggage. Our hands touched, briefly. But it was a moment in my life that I'll never forget, for I touched a soul for the first time, for the only time. My heart sped up. My palms were sweaty. I looked down, and he walked away. How could someone walk away after that? That afternoon, I got the job for American Airlines. It was something that I needed and wanted at the same time. I would finally have something to fall back on, just in case. I've always been a just-in-case kind of girl. My parents weren't reliable. My father gambled away most of his life savings, and my mother was a drunk. She was in and out of rehab most of my life, as I was in and out of foster homes, in between vendors. I always had a suitcase packed along with my doll Sarah and a funky-looking camera my grandfather gave me. It was sad, really, a life of a little girl, roaming from place to place, always prepared for adventure. I learned from childhood not to live in glass houses. There was always something or someone better out there. I knew that from the moment I had left for that first time. Never throw stones was practically my mantra. I hadn't had the best childhood, and I wasn't the best person in the world either. It was something I was constantly working on. After I got to my hotel room, I decided to take a look at the beach before turning in. Immediately, I felt my heart hammer in my chest. The man from the airport was there. I just knew it. You, a male voice said. I turned in the direction and was assaulted by the sea blue eyes. Yes. It was as if 2 worlds collided into one that day. We came shortly together after in a kiss that I will never forget for the rest of my life. It was he that I was made for. The rest of our night was spent in his arms, legs tangled, hearts entwined, a vase full of beautiful red roses beside the bed. Jessup closed the journal and placed the pressed rose back in its place. He wiped his eyes once more before going out into the hallway. He pulled a black case down from the closet and wiped the dust from its outer shell. He unlocked it slowly, taking small choking breaths before he grasped the Glock in his hand. He walked out into the garden where his wife was tending her roses and waited for her to look up. 2 bullets later, they both lay in a pool of their own blood, rosebuds scattered everywhere like ash. Had Jessup read the last page of the journal, he would have seen the words, "The End," and realized his wife was finally fulfilling her dream of being a writer. That's my story. Vote for Danielle.
Marketing is a constant part of being a writer, that's for certain.
It is. And speaking of marketing, it is one of my favorite topics because it seems like we either love it or hate it. And unfortunately, we can't afford to be artists living in a bubble, creating our art to a vacuum. You know, we have to sell it to people or nobody will see it. What are some of the strategies you use, and do you think that Iron Writers is a marketing tool?
I think the Iron Writer can be a marketing tool. I think that you have to be very cautious, though. There have been those that have come in and have been bound and determined to turn it into a marketing platform or a writing workshop as opposed to something where your change can just happen organically through the completion of the exercises. And I've noticed that those people don't seem to get out of the Iron Writer what they want to. Mm-hmm. But if you are a part of the group and you participate, then the marketing happens naturally because people will read your book and they will blog about it and they will tell other people about it, and so your readership will grow that way. So I think if it's something that you let happen, it can be indispensable for your career. But if it's something that you try to force, then you're not going to get what you're looking for that mm-hmm. way. For me, with marketing, I think a lot of us as writers are socially, I don't know if awkward is the right word, but we don't necessarily march to the beat of the rest of society a lot of times. And for me, the way that I have learned to deal with that and the way that I have learned to market is that I've actually built a persona around my pseudonym. So when I go out, I'm not going out as me. I am going out as Caile DeVore. So I put on my persona with my corset.
Right.
And I go and sell my books. And awesome. I go and sell my books, and I go and I sell the books for the other people who have signed with me. And while I personally would be horrified at the thought of going up to a stranger and saying, hey, buy my book, once I put on that persona, I have no problem with it, and sales go remarkably well. But I think the other key to marketing is diversification. We are available through Barnes & Noble, both. You know, they stock our books and we're available through their website. We are on Amazon. We are on other retail sites. And we go to conventions at least once a month.
Mm-hmm.
So we are out there absolutely everywhere. And I think that's going to be the key for a lot of authors. Not everybody. There are some markets where ebooks alone sell incredibly well. But mm-hmm. I think for the majority of authors, the more venues that you can stick your toes in, the better you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Which is where Iron Writer is handy because, like we said before, there are people from various levels, you know, who read various genres, and so you're going to be able to expand your reader base just by participating.
Yeah, even as a non-participant, even if you're not a writer, I would think that it would be a really enjoyable site to visit every week just to see how everybody does. I mean, it is very exciting to bring in the element of competition, I think, into writing, which tends to be kind of a loner activity. We don't compete with each other normally, except for in like contests where you don't know each other. This is wonderful.
It is. It's fantastic. And one thing that I like is that they've actually been tweaking the judging system over the past 6 months. Originally, it was strictly popular vote. And that became kind of problematic because there are unscrupulous people out there who will go and they will do vote trading and they will do vote farming on the various programs and websites that you can run. And we actually had that happen a couple of times. And there was also some concern about it becoming a popularity contest where, you know, the people that were more well-known were going to get more votes than the people that were just starting out, which can be discouraging for people who are new to it. And so there's been a lot of talk and a lot of debate and a lot of, I think, really heartfelt desire to make this as much of a growth opportunity as possible, which is why it's now actually a combination of popular vote and judging. And the judges volunteer and they follow a rubric. And so there is a formula for the combination of popular vote points and judges' points that I think make it a really, really great and very fair competition.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was going to ask you, how are the winners decided upon in a competition?
Well, like I said, there is a poll that is there at the bottom of every story. And so you go on and you read the stories and you vote for whoever you want. And a lot of a lot of marketing goes into that. That's where you can actually hone your marketing skills, because you need to not be afraid to say, hey, go to this website, read the page.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny because there are people who are far more modest and perhaps less cutthroat about it that say, go there and read and vote for your favorite one. My approach is I will say, go there and read them and vote for me. I mean, if someone else is your favorite, send them a nice note, but vote for me.
I like that.
But that's now combined with 4 judges. And the judges they vote on use of elements and story structure. But one thing that I like about it that actually makes the judging work for me cognitively, they award the best story point to whomever they want. So that's one thing that I like, because, yes, if you do a better job of working in the elements, that's going to make for a better story. And if your spelling and punctuation are the best, it's going to make for a better story. But the simple fact is some stories just touch you. And I hate the fact that, I hate the potential for a story because you had a homonym in there, so your spell check didn't catch it and you didn't catch it reading it. I hate the fact that you could potentially lose because of that. And so the fact that they've eliminated that by saying, listen, here are our judging guidelines, but overall, tell us whose story you think is the best, which one just appeals to you, I think is absolutely fantastic.
That is wonderful, and especially because some judges may be biased against, like me, I said romance. I might be biased against romance, and there's 3 romances and a horror, and I'll probably vote for the horror based on that.
That's what appeals to you.
Yeah, there's 3 other people doing that judging, and plus the popular vote, so that's excellent how that works.
It really is, and we're actually looking to sweeten the pot here soon by actually providing awards of ebooks to the weekly winner, which is actually another awesome marketing opportunity because the authors who are published and who are Iron Writers have agreed to allow their books to be available. And so that gives more marketing for us because more people can find out that we're out there, but it's also a nice thing to do for other people as a way of saying, hey, great job, you won. Yeah, I'll send you a copy of my book.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much for being on the show. That was awesome. I want to go ahead and play a clip of the founder of the Iron Writers now, who started the whole thing. This is Brian Rogers saying what happened and how he started Iron Writers in his own words. So let's play that clip now.
All right. It was about January a year ago, so 2013. And there's a lady in Virginia by the name of Victoria Doherty. And she had a blog, and we'd run into each other. I do not recall how or where along the line. But she asked me to participate in a blog tour. Excuse me. And I was thinking, okay, it's going to be one of those normal author interviews. What's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? Where have you traveled? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I think those are called the Proust questionnaire. Have you ever heard of them? So anyway, that was my expectation. So I told her, yeah, sure, what I'll do, I'll do this. Just tell me what you want. So I committed before I really knew what was going on. She emailed me about a day or so later and said, no, what I want you to do is to write a flash fiction piece. Now, I'll be honest with you, I had no idea what flash fiction was. Never heard of it. It wasn't even on my radar. And she said there has to be 4 elements involved in this. And the 4 elements were a 1959 ZIL-3, a dead gypsy, a jug of moonshine, and now I can't remember what the 4th one was. And I can't remember what they were. You may have to really edit this to make it sound good, by the way. But anyway, let's see. There's the dead gypsy. Oh, a mounted swordfish. The 4 elements were a mounted swordfish, a dead gypsy, a 1959 ZIL-3, and a jug of moonshine. So I'm sitting there that night going, what did I get myself into it? Because, I'm one of those guys, my father and my mother raised me, if you promise to do something, you do something, even if you don't want to do it. So I'm laying there that night in bed like, oh, man. Oh, and she did give me 6 weeks to do the story, thankfully. So I'm just kind of like, oh, wow. So not knowing what to do, and I had no idea what the 1959 ZIL-3 was. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear the airplane flying over?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that going to make a mess on your end?
Oh, not at all.
Okay. So the next morning, I sit down on the computer. It's actually in the afternoon the next day. I sit down on the computer and typed in and searched for this 1959 Seal 3.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently it was an armored vehicle that the Russian, Khrushchev and the Russian leaders were chauffeured around in. It was to protect them, like we have limousines now, okay?
Yeah.
And so I sit there, I look at that, and all of a sudden, in a matter of seconds, my muse come by, dropped it on me, I had everything I needed. And about 4 hours later, I was done, and that included writing and editing. I was finished with this, and I mailed it off to Victoria. And so there were 6 of us participating in this blog tour. Each person got a different week to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, in fact, there was one writer with almost 2,000 words.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and mine was like 506 words, something along those lines. Another fellow, he wrote one that was really quite good. I was very impressed with his. And anyway, he put his story together. What my story was is I went and found a place out in remote Russia. I put a safe house out there where I had a gypsy seducing an American spy.
Oh.
And the handler, the Russian handler comes in, okay, and when he opens the door, here's the gypsy dead in the bed with the swordfish pulled off the wall and the sword right through the woman's abdomen. So she's laying dead, and the moonshine, the jug of moonshine was laying on the floor, and the moonshine was still leaking out. Okay, and by the way, the handler is driving this 1959 Seal 3.
Mm-hmm.
So the handler panics, like, oh, we got something wrong. Where's the American? He figured this out. So he starts running out to his car, and by the way, he had his driver, circle it down the road a ways, whatever it is. He's radioing his driver to bring the vehicle back, and inside somebody that's not the driver. And so there's a quick gunfight. The guy goes rushing back. The handler goes rushing back into the safe house. The gypsy is missing. The American's on the bed with a swordfish through his chest. Okay, and that's where the story ended.
Oh my goodness.
That's the deal. And so I'm sitting there going, and I sit there and looked at this thing, afterwards, and I've got to admit, I was in awe of what I had done in such a short time.
Yeah.
And it dawned on me at that point that this is a brilliant way to get the creativity going. You're limited in the amount of words you can have, the 500,
Mm-hmm.
which means every word counts. You got to know what you're doing. You got to make this thing work. Okay? So I was still musing about this the next day, and I was down at work, and I was talking to a coworker, and I was telling him about it, and he goes, "This sounds like Chopped or the Iron Chef." And the bells went off in my head. It just ding, 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 ding. There it was. Okay?
Yeah.
So I came back home that night, and the Iron Rider was taken already. It was some reference to some blog that had not been used since 2006.
Oh, wow.
So I typed in the Iron Rider, and it was available. So I jumped on that URL, paid for it. I put this whole thing together, on a blog, a WordPress blog, in about 3 or 4 days, and then I just went out on Facebook and said, "Hey, people, here's my idea. Come join me."
Yeah.
And it's just taken off from there.
Wow.
And this time last year, a couple of months later, I was lucky if we got, 100 people a week that would come in and look at this.
Yeah.
And participate. As I put up on the website, earlier today, we have almost 700 per day for the first 2 days of the month of May, about 700. During April, we averaged, 400 a day,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So it just took off.
That is fantastic.
And along the way, I met a lot of good people, particularly those in Indiana, who jumped on, and I don't know how they found it. I think about Mike Pittman's history. He was just Googling contests or something.
Yeah.
And this popped in. So he joined, and then somebody else joined, and then somebody else's friend joined, and it just take off. It's taken off from there.
Yeah.
We've had maybe 150 writers join us in the year. Of that, about 100 are on the Facebook group, and out of that, there's probably 40 that are really active.
Right.
And it's very slowly doing this, fairly taking, taking the time to build it. But like you said, it's a great idea. It really is.
And now we're going to play our final clip of the afternoon. This is Stephen Harz, and we are going to listen to his piece for the Writers Open. And one of these four will be the Iron Writer of 2014. So now that you've gotten to hear them all in a minute, you can leave a comment and see which one you think will be the best one. Or go to theironwriters.com and just vote. But right now, we're going to hear from Stephen.
I've participated in the Iron Writer Challenge 3 times to date, and fortunately have been able to win each time. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoy it because it really challenges you and makes you kind of write to a bunch of disparate themes. So it's very challenging, but I enjoy that entire process. Traditionally, I write poetry and short fiction. I have 3 books that are available on Amazon, the latest being titled More Pennies Than Water. And today I'm going to read for you one of my past entries for the Iron Writer Challenge. It's called Gas Station Roadmap, and here it is. Your history had been written in pencil on bathroom walls by inaccurate historians, bent on cruel conquest rather than mutual capture. And while we had been told that history is written by the victor, I do not subscribe to that theory, because in actuality, history is written by those who survived the longest. And since you are here with me, and they have disappeared, I have taken an eraser and eliminated your past, allowing us to rediscover the world together, using a bottom drawer broken compass and aiming the frozen needle anywhere we need true north or due south to be. We do not discover with a plan like Lewis and Clark and their covered wagon wheel ruts and Chinook canoe wakes, but rather meander with a purpose, taking clues from junkyard road signs and Howard Johnson 50-state placemats. And along the way, we are comforted by mismatched, borrowed rocking chairs and the distant big band signal coming from a friendly front porch 1935 Detroit Cathedral vacuum tube radio, with its map of the world station dial that helps us avoid the fault line that runs from your lips to my chest. And one twist of the radio's dial to the right points us towards Komodo Island and its dragon discovered by the Dutch, and to the left, the West Indies, where ancient history is broadcast on a coconut telegraph, and each step forward is a quick stand leap towards comfort. And we walk the extra mile barefoot down median strips, holding hands with a posture suggesting a mix of love for each other and a protection from the world. And when we reach our destination, we will rewrite history, yours, mine, and ours, with permanent ink in the margins of a public library atlas, and will compose our future, word for word, along the rural routes of a gas station roadmap.
Wow. These have been such powerful, powerful pieces of writing. 500 words, 4 elements, and each writer gets four days to do this. And they have been competing throughout the year in Iron Writers, each other, in a bracket system. Now, the 4 of these that you have just heard are going head-to-head. It is going to be Danielle Lee Zwissler, Don Corcoran, Dani J. Caile, and Stephen Harz going head-to-head to find out who is going to be Iron Writer of 2014. And I do want to say, I apologize, we've lost Amanda, and I also got my call dropped. This is one reason why we're switching the show to YouTube. It's going to be wonderful. We will no longer have issues like this because the show will be, there will no longer be a live chat room anymore. That, unfortunately, that won't be there. But the show will no longer have these problems. It'll be pre-recorded. It'll be polished and put together with music and backgrounds, and we can have sound effects. And it'll be on YouTube, which is easily available to everybody. You can embed it in your blog. You can easily share it. I'm really, really excited to move to this new platform. And we had Amanda Huntley on the show today. She is the publisher of Line by Lion, as well as Three Fates Press, are her 2 imprints. And I'm very excited to have her on here, as well as she is an Iron Writer. So it was really nice to be able to have her perspective. We're going to have her back on the show soon so that we can talk just about publishing. And how exciting is that? We can pick her brain. We can possibly have callers in if we want, but we will pick her brain about all things publishing. Unfortunately, this is pretty much the end of our show. This show will be available on YouTube later this week. This is the beginning of May. This is May 4th. This will be available on YouTube on our new channel. This will be the brand new show. So stay tuned. You can find out by logging in Journal Jabber on Facebook. You can find us there. You can find it on my blog. I'm sure I will be announcing it, which is D as in dog, fluff.com or dandelionfluff.com. And, yes, stay tuned because I'm really, really excited about this new channel. Next week we're going to have a Mother's Day show, and it'll be author Dawn Robertson. And I hope that you'll take a moment to visit our sponsor, The Eyes for Editing, and thank them for their generous support of Journal Jabber and of authors everywhere. And we're going to go ahead and end the show. We heard from our 4 contestants for Iron Riders. We will be sure to let you know who wins. I think we'll know next week, so maybe I can announce that next week on the show. But I'm very excited. I want to thank each of the Iron Riders that read their work for us today. That'd be Danielle Lee Zwissler, Don Corcoran, Dani J. Caile, and Stephen Harz. Thank you so much, guys, for reading your work on the show. Thank you, Brian Rogers, for starting Iron Riders. This is such an exciting venue and such an exciting thing for writers to have access to. I wish you the best of luck with this, and I think this is going to go huge. And I'm just so excited that we got to have the 4 contestants here on the show. And I hope that's an annual thing, that every year we can have that. And maybe even the opens. I mean, that would be exciting, too, because this has been really entertaining. I will go ahead and let you go. And until next Sunday, keep your pen to the paper, your fingers on the keyboard, and your mind in high gear, and we will jabber with you later. Bye. See you next Sunday.